The idea of a sexy, dominant monster is very popular. Monsters are already oppressive, violating antagonistic forces, and this allows for flirtation with rape fantasies when given an eroticized form. It's typically done with vampires or werewolves these days, but it crops up with all forms of monsters, and Jennifer's Body does it with a succubus. While I'm especially critical of the depiction of Nikolai as a figure evocative of a real-world rapist, the sexy dominant monster is a whole different beast. They're less realistic and more fantastic, and they can allow experimentation with hardcore BDSM fantasies in a safe way. They can still have problematic depictions, but they have to be approached differently. Jennifer's Body actually does something fairly interesting with their sexy dominant monster. Jennifer is abusive to Needy, and the film depicts that to the fullest extent in a way sympathetic to Needy. Jennifer's visit is equivalent to her coming home drunk, making a mess, puking all over her partner, and then scaring her with sexual aggression. Needy just cleans it all up and carries on, and then Jennifer acts like nothing happened, like Needy just imagined it all, and even insults her when she pushes. There's a meaningful, sympathetic parallel to real-world abuse even with the sexy monster dominance. And that makes Jennifer's Body superior to stories like Twilight, which have sexy monster dominance, without any nod to the inherent problem depicted in such a scenario. The late Roger Ebert called Jennifer's Body Twilight for boys. So yes, it is related. So yeah, Jennifer pretends nothing happened. Jennifer also shows a complete disregard for anyone besides Needy, laughing at people mourning the victims of the fire like the psychopath she is. Needy goes to Chip for help, but he has no useful advice and he doesn't believe her about the magic vomit. And then Jennifer goes to feed. There's a sensitive jock named Jonas who's mourning the loss of his friend. Though his first appearance seems like it pokes fun at the stereotype of jocks as tough guys, they stick to his portrayal as a guy who is truly upset while still traditionally masculine. So, thumbs up for that.
Hey, Jennifer.
Jennifer seduces him. Jennifer, as a sexy, dominant monster, also plays with gender roles in an interesting way. She takes what is usually a male role of a sexually motivated killer to a greater extent than is usually done with that kind of character.
You're killing people. No, I'm killing boys.
She preys on boys, which isn't a unique concept, but she is powered up enough as a succubus that this whole gender dynamic shifts, and boys end up occupying the roles usually handed to girls. The boys end up especially vulnerable because they aren't used to vulnerability and having to keep their guard up. If a boy approached a girl on her own in the middle of nowhere when she was grieving, started hitting on her, and moved her hand onto one of his sexualized body parts, immediately red flags would be raised. The guy would be considered a threat, and she'd try to get away from him. But that's because our society has built up these sexist ideas that boys are strong while girls are weak, that girls are valued primarily for appealing to boys sexually, that girls don't have big sexual drives on their own, that girls who are sexual are to be shamed, and that boys are highly sexual and nigh uncontrollable once they get aroused enough. By placing Jennifer in the boys' position and her male victims in the girls' positions, these unnecessary cultural rules get torn down, and our assumptions get put into question. It's also interesting that the focus is always on Jennifer and Needy, two girls, with the boys in the periphery. So it ends up as an effective feminist subversion of the male power status quo. Jonas incorrectly assumes that he has the power, and he goes off with her into the woods to have sex. It seems like Jennifer is an evil version of Snow White, as all the woodland animals show up to watch like creepy little voyeurs. Jennifer has sex with him and eats him. A teacher overhears his screams and investigates, only to come across his mutilated corpse, being nibbled at by a deer. It's funny in a sick way, as deer are supposed to be innocent, but in the end they're just animals. And this throws brutal nature in our faces. Meanwhile, Edie cooks dinner while listening to the radio. The DJ talks about Low Shoulders supposedly being these heroes who help people escape the fire.
You know, the real heroes are the people of Devil's Lake.
Needy's mother comes in for a 4 p.m. breakfast as she works the night shift, and she describes a nightmare she had about people trying to nail Needy to a tree like Jesus Christ. This could be an indication that Needy is a Christ figure, but it could also just be a reference to the Jennifer's Body song, which has the line, "He cuts you down from the tree." It's not foreshadowing any literal event, but it could be taken as a bad omen indicating terrible things are about to happen to her in general. And then Jennifer swims naked through the lake. It's just showing off her body for the audience. I mean, technically she's cleaning off the blood and being creepy, but at the end of the day it's just gratuitous nudity. It's a little bit better in the director's cut, where we first see Jonas's parents talking about the unknown killer as a man, with the father doing this over-the-top threat about cutting off his balls. And then we see it's actually a strong woman against the expectation of male strength and female weakness, which was what the director intended. The theatrical version, however, is pure fan service, and it's still ultimately about showing off Megan Fox's body. Later that night, Jennifer calls Needy to brag about how fantastic she feels. Needy is aghast because they should be in a state of mourning, but Jennifer just doesn't care anymore. Chip calls Needy at the same time, and while Jennifer's on hold, she plays around with her new powers through burning her tongue and watching it heal.
I am a god.
Feminists sometimes interpret this as misogynistic, as it abuses the female body in an eroticized way. But I think it's just that Jennifer is constantly sexualized, and she's just doing the equivalent of Peter Parker testing out his Spider-Man powers. Anytime a hot girl like that sticks out her tongue, it's going to be sexual, whether she's burning it like Jennifer or attacking someone with it like Alice in Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen. The only problem I see is an overly sexualized female character, and that's hardly limited to this scene. Needy hangs up on her to go meet Chip. In another gender role flip, he's the one concerned about Jonas's murder, and Needy has to comfort him. In contrast to something like early Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where every gender role flip just screams feminist statement, this actually works really well here. People aren't just stereotypes, and making Chip concerned about people and Needy strong makes them come across as more like real people than the standard boy and girl characters, which I think is a strength of movies written by Diablo Cody. There's a time skip to a month later, and Needy explains that everyone sinks into depression but Jennifer, while the town gets tons of media attention for the fire and cannibal killer. Low Shoulder becomes the face of the tragedy, and Through the Trees becomes the town's anthem of grief, to unite them in healing. Needy gets into an argument with a girl over Low Shoulder not being heroes. At this point, the energy Jennifer absorbed from Jonas runs out. We can tell this because she looks terrible, while still more beautiful than any woman any of us are likely to ever meet, which Needy lampshades at one point.
Are you PMSing or something?
PMS isn't real, Needy. It was invented by the boy-run media to make us seem crazy.
This is more or less accurate, though there is some medical basis for changes in neurochemistry around the menstrual cycle. Premenstrual syndrome, as we understand it, is largely a socially constructed disorder, as with the placebo effect, where people expect the positive and negative effects of a drug, and then make their bodies conform to the expectation in absence of an actual drug. Girls and women tend to make symptoms of PMS appear just because they've been conditioned to expect them. That then is received as evidence of a real phenomenon, and it propagates in a positive feedback loop. It also does have its roots in sexist science from the 1800s, where it was connected with female hysteria, a junk disorder meant to pathologize all sorts of normal behavior of women. It has also largely been used as an excuse for keeping women out of the workforce, and is commonly referenced by modern misogynists for why there shouldn't be a female president, as she would supposedly become overcome by rage and nuke the world. Boys today commonly bring up PMS to explain away behaviors in girls they don't like, so they don't have to treat girls as human beings with thoughts and feelings of their own. It's possible that in her desire to write a feminist horror film, Diablo Cody wrote that in to sneak in a positive feminist message, and both her and Karin Kusama agree in the commentary that there is a boy-run media. Even if that was the intent, though, it comes across as laughing at feminists for outlandish beliefs. Everyone in the theater laughs because they understand PMS as a real phenomenon. If Needy said it, there might be a different response because we respect her as a nerdy protagonist. Jennifer, however, has consistently been portrayed as stupid, trashy, evil, and to be disrespected for it. So we dismiss her point as absurd. Later on, she insults Needy by implying she has PMS, so it sounds like she really does think it exists or is just saying random things. Right about then, an emo kid named Colin shows up, played by Kyle Gallner, who was also on Veronica Mars with Amanda Seyfried. Incidentally, the brief shot we get of the Devil's Kettle movie theater shows it plays Forgetting Sarah Marshall, which also starred Kristen Bell of Veronica Mars. Colin tries to ask out Jennifer, but she rejects him. Needy protests that Jennifer should be nicer to him, and that makes Jennifer interested. She calls him back and makes a dinner date. People generally interpret her as jealous, and while I think that's part of it, I think she's just generally abusive. Abusive people like to isolate their partners, keeping them from having friends, and they also like to destroy things that belong to them. Needy likes Colin, so Jennifer wants to destroy him. At the end of the day, this is about Jennifer and Needy. On that same night, Needy and Chip have sex. This is treated as healthy, romantic sexual experimentation, which means I can't entirely write off this film as a puritanical mess, just Jennifer's portrayal. The Needy-Chip sex scene does strike me as feminist in a third-wave way, because they're cautious and try to please each other equally.
Slippery swirl.
Yeah, it's supposed to make it feel good for the girl.
Cool.
And the whole thing's just generally cute. Meanwhile, Jennifer sends Colin to pick her up from an isolated, partially constructed house. When he sees it, he gets concerned, but doesn't think it's sketchy enough to bail like a girl would with a guy. Boys are used to having power and not having to be cautious around girls. Interestingly, this makes girls in the audience laugh because he comes across as oblivious to obvious danger. But the boys don't laugh as much because that kind of caution isn't drilled into them. Jennifer again seduces him and attacks him like Jonas. We see more of the attack this time, and we learn that fear makes the energy transfer more potent or something. So we have an evil, cruel sex scene to contrast with the good, loving sex scene on Needy's end. Needy gets freaked out when she psychically taps into Jennifer's thoughts and gets flashes of violent imagery. The scene combines sex appeal and horror in a weird blend to freak us out, and I get the impression we're supposed to take it as lesbian subtext about Jennifer having violent sex with Needy. Maybe this kind of psychic sex scene is what's needed to get around MPAA restrictions or something, I don't know. Chip is always a nice boy, and he has no idea there's this violent scene playing out in Needy's head, so he can't be blamed for her discomfort. Needy runs to the car. She starts driving towards Jennifer. Jennifer intercepts her, looking all bloody and inhuman. She scares Needy so she'll go home. Needy cowers for a bit and falls asleep as she thinks over all the scary Jennifer moments. She gets up and goes to bed, and she finds Jennifer there waiting to snuggle with her.
Hi. Hi, Needy, enough with the screaming. You're such a cliche.
Needy freaks out, but Jennifer tells her to calm down, that she'll never hurt her. She makes a reference to them sharing the bed during slumber parties, as if Needy was trying to cop a feel or something. Jennifer then kisses her, and we get an extreme close-up. Needy kisses back and then starts kissing Jennifer after she moves away. This is why I don't believe the argument that it's never actually shown that Needy is sexually attracted to Jennifer. Yes, Jennifer kisses her first, but Needy returns and then pursues her. They're both bisexual, damn it. This scene receives some extreme criticism from feminists, and I have to say they're right. It's all about making two young women erotic to the audience, focusing on their bodies. Diablo Cody and Karin Kusama say that it's not for the male gaze, and that it's about women, but you can't just deny years and years of pandering to the male gaze.